The Friends of Fort George, Parks Canada, and a small group of local historians spent the past 3 years collecting facts to write the first ever publication on the fort. We sent program manager Jack Custers and producer Mark Wikobrado to find out more about the new book called Fort George, A History. Let's take a look.
Amanda Gamble, Executive Director of the Friends of Fort George, and Dan Laroche, Site Supervisor at Fort George, sat down with the source inside the officers' quarters to explain how the book came to be.
In 2019, we put together a book committee of 7 authors, and we started meeting at Navy Hall and kind of outlining what we wanted the book to include. And it started off, it was going to be, I think, 50 pages with a map in the middle, and it would just kind of talk about the buildings. And Dr. Wesley Turner, who was on the committee, made this very poignant remark. He said, but what about the people that lived at Fort George and called it home? And what about the soldiers that lived there? Like, this was their home away from home. And I think from there, it just kind of grew, because then we wanted to include those very human experiences. What was it like at Fort George for the British and the Americans? And it ended up being over 150 pages and really gives you a full overview of the fort.
It's not that there isn't any books or research that's been done on the site. It's the fact that really many of them, certainly we've got a number of internal reports, archaeology reports, and actual studies that have been done. But really until now, the age of the internet, they really haven't been accessible to the general public. And even then, they're so narrowly very specific on things. This really is the first publication that's ever been generally accessible and is a general overview of the site's history and archaeology, all of the stories. And basically, it's one-stop shopping.
Fort George National Historic Site was built between 1796 and 1802. Many local partners helped contribute images and documents for the publication.
Some of the images came from Parks Canada internally. Some of them, we got a lot from the Niagara-on-the-Lake Museum. They were really supportive of the project, and it was really nice that we were able to use some of their images for it. And then some of the other maps we got from, like, the Walsh print is held by Michigan University, so we got permission from them. And that's the only image from the period that shows what Fort George looked like on the inside from the early 1800s. So we wanted to make sure we included that one. And actually we got a lot from, like, Joseph Last, the archaeologist. He provided us with a lot of images that he took in the field. So these are kind of never before seen images, which is really neat too. And then a lot of them were things from, like, previous staff.
Laroche has worked at Fort George for over 35 years. He's very proud of the book and what he and the other 6 authors accomplished.
Fort George specific related, what I find fascinating anyways, is the fact that you quite often get historic sites that, you know, if it wasn't for the battle that happened here, Canada wouldn't exist today. Those sorts of things, that's not part of our story here necessarily. We were defeated here, and actually we're in occupied territory for 7 months. You don't often, perspectives may play a different role in this one. But when we talk of certainly Canadian history from a European perspective anyways, when we talk about this was enemy-occupied territory for about 7 months, and that's a very unique, I think, aspect of this area. Other elements certainly are the fact that the local area was burnt to the ground as the Americans left, and then even other local areas into the following year after this. I mean, the gloves really came off in this conflict, but particularly the burning of Niagara, December 10th, is I think it's certainly a big one. And then the other element is the fact that, yeah, we're Reconstruction here, but the powder magazine is certainly the oldest building in the area. Very likely anyways, and certainly very likely one of the, if not the oldest military building in Ontario. So those to me are the biggies.
Sales of the book will help fundraising initiatives for the Friends of Fort George.
The biggest way that we support Parks Canada is certainly through student employment opportunities. So we hire between 10 and 20 students every year to work at both Fort George and Brock's Monument. And we raise funds for that through our special events. We run the ghost tours here at Fort George, and we have our gift shop at Fort George and Brock's Monument. So this book was really great for us because the revenue that it raises is going to help support student employment on the site. But for us, it also hits our mandate of raising awareness and getting the story out, because there's certain aspects about Fort George that we don't talk about on a daily basis, like the reconstruction of the site or its role in World War I. So this book allows us to fill in those pieces and really share that full history.
Fort George: A History can be purchased in person at the Niagara-on-the-Lake Museum or through the online gift shop at friendsoffortgeorge.ca. Reporting for The Source, I'm Mark Wikobrado.